Final part, 1 of 4. My son took my name off the repair shop I had built over 32 years, then handed me a visitor badge in front of 9 employees. He said I could stay long enough to train the new manager, but my office was already empty and my key no longer fit the side door. A fleet customer was arriving at noon, and Eric still needed my state inspection license and specialty equipment to win the contract. I followed him past the blank space above the service bays, where Keen Diesel had been the night before. Then I saw whose name had replaced mine on the contract folder. Hey everyone, welcome to today's story. Before we begin, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. Quick note, this story includes fictional elements for storytelling purposes, but the message behind it is what truly matters. Now, let's see what Walter discovered. My key went halfway into the side door lock and stopped. I pulled it out, wiped it against my work shirt, and tried again because that was what a man did when he had used the same door 6 mornings a week for more than 3 decades. The key had opened it at 6:15 the previous evening. By 6:12 the next morning, it might as well have belonged to another building. I was still leaning close to the lock when the door opened from inside. Eric stood there in a white button-down shirt I had never seen him wear at the shop. He had rolled the sleeves to his elbows, though the shirt was too clean for that gesture to fool anybody who worked around diesel engines. "Dad," he said, "use the front today." "Why?" He looked over his shoulder before answering. "We changed a few things." I stepped past him. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Our technicians were working, but nobody had the radio on. Tasha Nguyen had a Freightliner lifted in Bay 2, and her impact wrench stopped the second she saw me. Marisol Vega stood behind the service counter with both hands resting on a stack of invoices she wasn't reading. 2 younger mechanics suddenly found reasons to look inside their tool drawers. That was when I looked up at the wall above the bays. For 27 years, 12 blue steel letters had been bolted there, Keen Diesel. The first 5 were gone. 4 pale rectangles and a row of screw holes showed where my last name had been. The remaining word looked stranded on the gray block wall. Diesel. Nothing before it, nothing after it. A folding ladder stood below the blank space, and the missing letters had been stacked face down beside a trash barrel. "You took the sign down," I said. Eric closed the side door behind us. "The new sign comes Friday." "What new sign?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached to the counter, picked up a plastic sleeve attached to a blue cord, and held it toward me. Inside was a printed card with Visitor across the top. Beneath that, in smaller type, someone had written, "Walter Keen Advisor." I didn't take it. "Is this supposed to be funny?" "No." "Then slow it down." That was something I had said to him since he was 16 and tried to explain a bad decision faster than I could question it. "Slow it down. Tell me what you did. Tell me why." This time, he pushed the badge closer. "Grant starts today. We have the Red Plains meeting at noon, and I need everyone clear about roles." "My role requires a badge? It keeps things professional. You changed my lock." "We changed all exterior locks." Without telling me. Eric lowered his voice. "Can we not do this in front of everybody?" He had already done it in front of everybody. My name was on the floor. My office door stood open across the shop, and through it I could see a long folding table where my desk had been. 3 cardboard boxes sat against the wall. One had my coffee mug sticking out of the top. Another held the framed photograph of Eric at 14, standing beside the first engine he had helped me rebuild. My desk itself was nowhere in sight. I looked at Marisol. She dropped her eyes. Eric touched my forearm. "Come into the conference room." We did not have a conference room. We had a part storage room where I had put a second-hand table and 6 mismatched chairs because Eric said customers with large accounts shouldn't have to discuss pricing beside the vending machine. Apparently, it had become a conference room overnight. There was a new glass board on one wall, and a television mounted where shelves of filters had been. At the head of the table sat a dark-haired man in a gray quarter-zip pullover. He stood when I entered. He was around 40, broad through the shoulders, with clean hands, and a watch that looked built for meetings rather than work. "Mr. Keen," he said. Grant Bell. I've heard a lot about you. On the table in front of him was a black folder, stamped Red Plains Municipal Services. Beneath the customer's name, a white label had been applied over whatever had originally been printed there. The label read, Grant Bell, General Manager. Eric's name appeared underneath as president. Mine was absent from the cover. But the folder was open to a page containing a copy of my certifications, my photograph, and a paragraph describing me as the shop's senior technical supervisor. Grant noticed where I was looking and closed the folder. We were reviewing the qualifications section, he said. Were you? Eric pulled out a chair. Sit down, Dad. Ask me to train him. Eric rubbed the side of his thumb against the table. It was a habit he had when he was trying not to show irritation. Grant will handle operations. You'll help with the technical transition. Ask me plainly, why are you making this harder? Because I want to hear how you plan to say it. Grant looked toward the door as if he might excuse himself, but Eric stopped him with a small shake of the head. Eric had always hated repeating himself. As a boy, he would mumble an apology once, then grow angry if I asked him to look at me and say it again. He took a breath. I need you to train Grant on the fleet side, while wearing a visitor badge. You won't need it once everyone adjusts. My key doesn't work. You're not running the place anymore. I ran it yesterday. That's the problem. Grant shifted in his chair. Eric kept going. We agreed you were stepping back. We agreed you would manage scheduling, billing, and hiring. We did not agree that my name would come off the wall while I slept. Your name isn't the business. It was when you needed it printed beside those certifications. Eric's face tightened. That's exactly why we need a cleaner structure. You keep treating every operational change like somebody is stealing your toolbox. Where is my toolbox? Neither man answered. It had been a practical question. My main chest weighed nearly 900 pounds empty and had not moved from the back wall of Bay 1 in 12 years. I left the room without waiting for permission. Eric followed me. The red chest was still there, but a laminated tag had been wired to the handle. Company asset inventory pending. I tore the tag off. That belongs to me. We're inventorying everything on site, Eric said. Then write my name on it. Dad, the diagnostic laptop in the bottom drawer belongs to me. The injector bench belongs to me. The mobile compressor belongs to me. Half the tools in this building came out of my pocket before this company had a checking account. Nobody's taking anything. I looked at the wall again. You started with the letters. Tasha had resumed working, though more slowly than before. She was 39, maybe 5'3", and could identify a failing wheel bearing from the far end of the building. I had hired her when 3 other shops treated her application like a joke. She kept her eyes on the Freightliner. Marisol still hadn't moved from the invoices. Grant appeared in the doorway behind Eric and said, Maybe we should give you 2 a minute. Eric turned on him. No. We have a meeting in less than 6 hours. He looked back at me. That contract changes everything. 26 vehicles, scheduled maintenance, roadside coverage, 3 years. We need to look stable. So, you removed the founder's name 12 hours before they arrived. We removed an outdated identity. It was the first answer he gave me that sounded rehearsed. What is the new identity? Redline Fleet Solutions. Redline? It tested well. With whom? It doesn't matter. It matters to the man whose sign is beside the trash. Grant cleared his throat. Walter, the industry's moving toward full-service fleet management. Preventive scheduling, reporting, route support, cost forecasting. The name needs to reflect that. You fix trucks? I asked him. I manage organizations. That wasn't my question. I understand shop operations. Can you set injector timing on that Cummins in Bay 4? He glanced through the window. That's not what Eric hired me to do. Can you tell Tasha why it's dropping fuel pressure under load? I'd rely on the technical staff. Which includes me. For the transition, Eric said. There it was again. I walked to the counter and picked up the visitor badge. For a second, I thought about snapping it. Instead, I placed it around my neck. Eric's shoulders loosened, just a little. He mistook the motion for agreement. Thank you, he said. You're just helping now. Once Grant understands the systems, you can finally take the time you keep saying you want. I had never said I wanted time. My wife, Helen, had said it. Eric had said it. Our accountant had once asked whether I had a retirement date in mind. I had answered that I wanted to reach 65 without crawling under a truck in January. Somehow, that had become a promise to disappear at 64. Who cleared out my office? I asked. I had a crew do it last night. Where's my desk? Storage. Where? An off-site unit. You moved my personal papers to a storage unit? We boxed your personal items separately. He pointed toward the room. Take whatever you want. Marisol finally spoke. Walter, your filing cabinet is locked in the parts cage. Her voice was careful. I kept the key. Eric looked at her. We discussed this. There were tax records in it, she said. And employee files from before the digital system. Those should have been scanned years ago. Some were. Some weren't. I'll deal with it. You won't, I said. Not until I look through it. Eric pressed his lips together, then nodded once. Fine. After the Red Plains meeting. Before. Dad, please don't turn this into a control fight. You changed my lock, moved my desk, tagged my tools, removed my name, and hired a stranger to replace me. I'm trying to determine what part you believe I still control. Tasha's impact wrench started again, louder than necessary. Eric looked around the shop. Office. Now. I don't have one. He flinched. It was small, but I saw it. Then he walked toward the parts cage, and I followed. Marisol came with us carrying the key. The cage had once been open shelving. We added wire walls and a lock after a temporary employee walked out with 6 new alternators. My green filing cabinet stood behind 2 pallets of oil filters, its bottom drawer dented from a forklift accident in 2009. Marisol unlocked it and handed me the key. Thank you, I said. I'm sorry, she whispered. Eric heard her. For what? She stared at him for a moment. Marisol had worked for me 17 years. She had raised 2 sons while managing customers who believed shouting made parts arrive faster. I had seen her handle angry drivers, grieving families, and one technician who threw a socket through a window. She rarely whispered. For not calling him, she said. Eric's face went still. You signed the confidentiality notice. I signed a notice saying the rebrand was private until today. I didn't sign anything saying I had to help you surprise your father. It wasn't a surprise. He knew he was retiring. I did not, I said. Helen told me you two discussed it at home. Helen discussed Florida. Same thing. No, I said. It isn't. Helen and I had been married 38 years. She had spent 29 of them working night shifts as a respiratory therapist, and she had retired the previous spring. She wanted us to rent a place near the Gulf for 6 weeks after Christmas, not move into matching chairs and wait for our joints to fail. I had agreed to hire another technician, so I could travel without checking my phone every hour. Eric had apparently converted that into complete surrender. He pointed at the cabinet. Get what you need. We don't have time for this. I opened the top drawer. My old paper ledgers were there, along with purchase receipts, equipment serial numbers, property tax notices, and the original operating agreement from when I had reorganized the shop 12 years earlier. The second drawer held personnel documents and insurance records. The third contained customer histories too old for the current software, but still useful when one of the farm accounts brought in a truck, held together by parts from 4 different decades. Nothing appeared disturbed. That almost made it worse. Somebody had handled the cabinet carefully enough to preserve everything while deciding I didn't need access to it. I removed the equipment file and the operating agreement. Eric watched me tuck both under my arm. What do you need those for? To remember what I own. You own part of the company. Nobody disputes that. How much? Don't start. How much, Eric? 40%. And the building? You own the building personally. The equipment listed in this folder? Some is yours. Some belongs to the company. Then the tags come off until we sort it. We need a current asset list for the contract. You need an honest one. Grant had followed us as far as the cage door. The proposal lists the facility and equipment available to the operating company, he said. Available isn't the same as owned. It's common to include leased equipment. Then where is the lease schedule? He looked at Eric. Eric said, "We're updating it." "Before noon?" I asked. Eric checked his watch. "I have calls to make." "Who told Red Plains I would supervise their work?" "You've always supervised fleet work. You just told me I don't run the place. Technical supervision isn't management." "Did you ask me?" "I didn't think I needed to ask you to keep doing your job. You called me a visitor." He opened his mouth, then shut it. Grant stepped closer. "Mr. Keene, nobody's diminishing what you built. The point is to free you from day-to-day responsibility while preserving your expertise during an orderly handoff." "How long is the handoff?" 90 days, Eric said. "And after 90 days? We'll evaluate." "Will I still be employed?" "You're an owner." "That wasn't my question. We haven't finalized compensation." I looked from my son to Grant. "You removed my salary before deciding whether I work here? Your draws have never been a salary in the normal sense. They paid my mortgage in the normal sense. You own the building, the rent covers plenty. The rent is $2,800 a month. The shop pays below market because I wanted the company strong." Eric rubbed his thumb against the table edge again, though there was no table near him now, so he caught himself and put both hands into his pockets. "We can review money later." "Who has reviewed it already?" "Dad." "Grant?" Grant's expression changed, not enough to tell me the answer, but enough to tell me there was one. "My compensation is between Eric and me," he said, "paid by the company I own 40% of." I was told Eric had operating authority. "He does. That doesn't make my questions improper." Eric stepped between us. "This is exactly why we needed a change. Every decision turns into a history lecture about what you own, what you bought, what you sacrificed. I cannot run a modern company while asking permission for every chair." "You moved more than a chair. And you're proving my point." For a few seconds, nobody said anything. I could hear the air compressor cycling at the back of the shop. It reached pressure, released with a sharp hiss, and went quiet. My father had loaned me $6,000 to open the first version of the business in 1994. He never worked there, never asked to approve a purchase, and never reminded me of the money unless I tried to skip a payment. I had spent years telling myself I was giving Eric more freedom than my father gave me. Standing beside that filing cabinet, I wondered whether Eric had experienced it differently. Maybe every old tool felt like my hand still on his shoulder. Maybe the name over the bays sounded less like a legacy to him and more like a ceiling. I could understand that without accepting what he had done. "All right," I said. Eric looked surprised. "All right, what?" "You want to run the company. Run it. Start by telling me the full plan before your customer gets here." "Our customer." "Then stop speaking as though I'm furniture." Grant leaned against the cage wall. Eric glanced toward him before responding. "Red Plains is consolidating maintenance. They want one provider for preventive service, inspections, emergency calls, and reporting. The contract gives us predictable revenue and enough volume to open a second shift. Grant has experience building those systems." "Where?" Grant answered. "North Star Logistics." "Doing what?" "Regional operations." "How many mechanics reported to you?" "Directly?" "None. I manage supervisors." "How many service bays?" "North Star outsourced repairs." "So your experience is sending trucks to shops." "My experience is reducing vehicle downtime by sending them to shops." "Walter," Eric said. "Enough. You asked me to train him. I'm determining where to begin." Grant gave a thin smile that wasn't quite offended. "I can learn the technical workflow." "I'm sure you can. But if a driver calls from Muskogee at 2 in the morning with a derate warning and a loaded truck, who decides whether he can limp it in, needs a mobile technician, or should shut down?" "The on-call lead." "Who is that?" "Tasha, initially." "Does Tasha know?" Eric said. "We're meeting with staff at 10. Tasha's wrench stopped again outside the cage. Apparently she knew now. I turned toward the opening. She was standing beside Bay 2 with her arms folded. "I don't do nights," she said. Eric walked out of the cage. We'll create a rotation. You told me Grant was handling operations. You didn't tell me I was taking calls all night. Nobody said all night. Walter and I split emergency calls. If Walter is gone, that leaves me. We're hiring. When? After the contract. Who covers before then? Eric glanced at me. Walter's not gone. Tasha looked at the visitor badge hanging from my neck. Could have fooled me. Marisol made a sound that might have been a laugh if the room had been different. Eric's cheeks darkened. Everyone needs to stop treating a brand change like a funeral. Then quit acting like he died, Tasha said. I removed the badge and set it on the service counter. Nobody is walking out today, I said. Tasha looked at me. You sure? I'm sure we have customer trucks in the bays. Finish what's promised. Don't make drivers pay for a family argument. Eric exhaled through his nose. Thank you. That wasn't for you. It's my company too. Then act like the people in it matter before the contract arrives. I picked up my boxes from the former office and carried them to Bay 1. Eric said there was no need, that someone could load them into my truck, but I kept walking. The first box held my mug, photographs, a stapler old enough to have survived 3 accounting systems, and a jar of hard candy I kept for customers' children. The second held manuals, handwritten notebooks, and the small wooden plaque Eric had made in 7th grade shop class. Keen and Son, he had burned into it, though at 12 he had not yet decided whether he wanted anything to do with engines. The letters slanted downhill. I had displayed it on my office wall for 24 years. I set it face down in the box, before anyone could see me holding it. The third box contained jackets, spare glasses, and the shoes I changed into before driving home. My desk drawers had been emptied into envelopes labeled personal, old receipts, and discard. I opened the discard envelope. Inside were birthday cards from employees, a photograph of Helen asleep in a plastic chair during our first overnight repair job, and a note Eric had left on my desk after his first week as manager. I know I'm hard to teach. Thanks for not giving up. I folded the note and put it in my shirt pocket. Grant joined me beside the tool chest. I understand this looks abrupt, he said. It doesn't look abrupt. It was abrupt. Eric believed a clean break would be easier. For whom? He considered that. Probably everyone except you. It was the first honest thing I heard from him. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Eric contacted me in March. It was October. 7 months. We started serious discussions in June. Did he tell you I approved? He said the ownership transition was settled. What transition? Grant looked toward the front counter. Eric was on the phone with his back to us. You'd retain your interest and rental income. Eric would have complete operational control. I'd take over daily management. You'd remain available as a technical consultant through the Red Plains onboarding period. Paid? I assumed so. Did you see a consulting agreement? No. Did you see anything signed by me? No. Then what made you think it was settled? Grant placed both palms on the edge of my tool chest, then seemed to realize it was mine and removed them. Eric said you were having trouble keeping up with changes. What kind of trouble? Software, scheduling, some customer communication. Be specific. He said you'd begun forgetting approvals and repeating work orders. A cold feeling moved through me, though not the dramatic kind people talk about. It was more like missing a step in the dark and catching yourself before you fell. My left hand tightened around the edge of the box. Did he say I was sick? He didn't use that word. What word did he use? Grant took a moment. Declining. I looked across the shop at my son. He was laughing softly at something the caller had said. Did you believe him? I believed he was trying to prevent a difficult situation from becoming public. You met me 10 minutes ago. Yes. Do I seem confused? You seem angry. That wasn't my question. No, he said. You don't seem confused. Then we understand each other. I'm not here to take advantage of you. You accepted my office. Eric assigned it to me. You accepted my job. I accepted a management position. Supported by my qualifications. He looked toward the folder in the storage room. For the Red Plains proposal, yes. without speaking to me. That was Eric's responsibility, and now it's yours. Grant's jaw moved slightly. What would you like me to do? It was a better question than I expected. I looked at the former office, at my desk's clean rectangle on the worn tile, at the empty wall where the crooked plaque had hung. Don't represent me in that meeting, I said. I wasn't planning to. If they ask whether I support the transition, don't answer for me. Fair. And don't touch the bottom 3 drawers of that chest. He almost smiled. Also fair. Eric ended his call and approached us. Red planes moved up the meeting. They'll be here at 11. You should revise the proposal, I said. What now? Remove any statement saying I approved this arrangement. It doesn't say that. Then remove anything implying it. Your bio says you're supporting technical onboarding. I haven't agreed. You just told everyone nobody is leaving. That means we finished today's work. It does not mean you own the next 90 days of my life. He lowered his voice. Can you give me 1 day without blowing this up? You had 7 months to give me one conversation. I tried. When? Every time I brought up retirement, you changed the subject. You brought up fishing. You brought up Florida. You brought up hiring. You never said you planned to remove me from payroll and install Grant in my office. Because you would have said no before hearing the plan. That is generally why people avoid asking. I knew you'd make it personal. You changed the name my father gave me. It is personal. He flinched again, and this time irritation gave way to something I couldn't read. I need this contract, he said. Why? Because the shop has been flat for 3 years. We were profitable. Barely. We replaced the roof, bought a service truck, and gave raises. And every dollar after that went back into equipment you wanted, equipment we use. That injector bench cost $87,000. It paid for itself in 14 months. That's how you answer everything. You bought a thing 30 years ago, so you're right forever. I didn't say that. You don't have to. Marisol called him from the counter. A supplier was holding for approval on a parts order. Eric walked away without answering me. I spent the next hour doing what I had done nearly every morning since before my son could drive. I checked open work orders, listened to technicians describe problems, and looked at what the trucks were actually doing rather than what a dashboard claimed they should be doing. Tasha's Freightliner had a pressure drop under load that did not appear at idle. We traced it to a cracked pickup tube inside the tank, not the pump Grant's projected maintenance software had flagged from the previous repair history. Tasha found the crack. I only asked the question that sent her back to the tank. In Bay 4, 19-year-old Cody Miles had installed a sensor harness too close to the exhaust shield. I showed him the melted section without raising my voice. He stared at it, embarrassed. I followed the diagram, he said. The diagram doesn't know this truck had a replacement manifold. I should have seen it. Now you will next time. I made him redo it. Grant watched from several feet away, taking notes on a tablet. You document these variations anywhere? He asked. Cody will add it to the work order. I mean a searchable knowledge system. Marisol keeps notes by unit number. Paper notes? Some. That's a risk. So is assuming every truck matches the diagram. Both can be true. I looked at him. Yes, they can. He nodded and typed something. I began to understand why Eric liked him. Grant did not argue merely to hear himself win. He watched, admitted what he didn't know, and treated confusion as a problem to organize. If he had come through the front door with Eric 6 months earlier and asked me to teach him our fleet work, I might have done it gladly. That made his presence harder, not easier. At 10, Eric gathered everyone beside the service counter. He stood beneath the pale marks where my name had been. Grant stood to his right. I stayed near Bay 1 with my arms folded. I know this morning has felt disorganized, Eric began. That's on me. I waited to see whether he would look at me. He did not. We're repositioning the company for larger commercial accounts. Starting today, Grant Bell is general manager. He'll oversee scheduling, customer systems, personnel, and growth planning. I'll remain president and focus on partnerships and expansion. Walter will support technical training during the transition. For how long? Tasha asked. Eric glanced at me before answering. We're still finalizing details. Is Walter retiring? Cody asked. He's reducing his role. Did Walter decide that? Marisol asked. Eric's voice sharpened. This isn't a debate. Then why gather us? Tasha said. Grant stepped forward. Because you deserve clarity about reporting and expectations. I also want to hear what each of you needs to do your work well. Nobody's job changes today. Walter's did, Marisol said. Nobody else's job changes today, Grant corrected. That small correction mattered. Eric looked annoyed, but he didn't interrupt. Grant explained that Red Plains might add a second shift, new service software, and an on-call schedule. Tasha asked about compensation. Marisol asked whether current customers would receive priority over the new fleet. Cody asked if the shop name was really changing. Eric answered that the new sign would read, Redline Fleet Solutions, a Keen company. I had not heard that part. A Keen company? I asked. It preserves brand recognition, he said. Whose recognition? Ours. My name is outdated on the wall, but useful in small print. Dad, not now. Grant looked between us. We can revisit brand language. It's already ordered, Eric said. Cancel it. No. Then remove Keen. Every head turned toward me. Eric stared as if I had struck him. You don't get to demand that after complaining I took it down. I'm not demanding. I'm telling you not to use my name to reassure customers while treating me as an embarrassment. It's my name too. Then put Eric Keen on it. He laughed once, without humor. You really would rather damage the company than let me change it. I would rather you decide whether my name has value before you print it. The sign is installed Friday. Then you have 3 days. For what? To tell me the truth about what I'm doing here. Nobody moved. The phone rang at the service counter, and Marisol answered it. The ordinary sound broke the gathering apart. Tasha returned to Bay 2. Cody hurried toward his truck. Grant asked Eric for the staff roster. Eric walked into the former office and shut the door. Though the glass panel meant we could still see him pacing. At 10:35, Helen called me. I stepped outside beside the scrap bin, where the air smelled of hot metal and the bakery 2 buildings down. How is it? She asked. My key didn't work. She was quiet for a moment. Did they finish the locks early? You knew about the locks? Eric said they were upgrading security this month. Did he tell you today was my retirement? What? Did you tell him I agreed to retire? No. I told him you agreed to take more time off. He said you two discussed it. We discussed how to get you out of that building for more than 4 consecutive days. That's not retirement. I sat on the concrete barrier near the loading area. He moved my office last night. Walter. My desk is in storage. He hired a general manager. My name is off the wall. Helen did not answer right away. I could hear cabinet doors closing in our kitchen. When worried, she cleaned one small area repeatedly. Come home, she said. I can't. Why? Red Plains is coming. Are you working for Eric today? I'm finishing what customers were promised. That wasn't my question. No, I don't know. He says I'm an advisor. Paid? Not decided. The cabinet door closed again. Come home after the meeting. Don't sign anything. I wasn't planning to. And don't agree because he looks scared. She knew me well enough to say the part I hadn't admitted. Eric did look scared. Angry, controlling, defensive, but beneath that, scared. It was there when he spoke about the Red Plains contract, and it had been there the few times I raised monthly numbers during the summer. I had assumed he was worried I would interfere. Maybe there was another reason. I'll call you after, I said. Walter? Yes? Bring the wooden plaque. I looked through the side door at the open box beside my tool chest. Why? Because he made that for you. Don't let somebody put it in a storage unit. At 10:53, 2 Red Plains representatives arrived in a white SUV, Dana Cole, their fleet director, and a maintenance coordinator named Luis Ortega. I knew Dana from a chamber breakfast and had repaired 2 of their trucks during an emergency the previous winter. Eric greeted them at the front door. Grant joined him wearing a jacket over the gray pullover. I remained beside Bay 4 until Dana saw me. "Walter," she called. "There you are." Eric's smile held, but his eyes shifted toward me. Dana crossed the shop and shook my hand. "I was starting to think they'd locked you in the engine room, just the side door," I said. She laughed, then noticed nobody else did. "New security," Eric said quickly. Dana looked up at the empty wall. "Where's your sign?" "Rebranding," Grant said. "We'll be Redline Fleet Solutions by Friday." Dana turned to me. "You finally letting the young people take over?" The truthful answer would have embarrassed my son in front of the customer he had spent months courting. The easy answer would have trapped me inside his plan. I looked at Eric. He was watching me with the same expression he had worn at 11 years old when he broke Helen's kitchen window and waited to see whether I would tell her he had been throwing a baseball inside. Back then, I had made him tell her himself. "We're still discussing my role," I said. Dana's smile faded. "I see." Eric stepped in. "Walter will lead technical onboarding. Grant will manage reporting, scheduling, and performance." "Has Walter reviewed the service plan?" she asked. "We've reviewed the requirements," Eric said. Dana kept looking at me. "Have you?" "I saw the folder this morning." "This morning?" "Dana," Eric said. "Why don't we sit down? We've prepared a full walkthrough." She nodded, but the warmth had left her face. In the storage room conference area, Grant presented charts showing staffing capacity, response times, preventive service intervals, and estimated cost reductions. Some numbers came from our records. Others appeared to assume a second shift we did not yet have, and 2 mobile technicians we had not hired. I listened without interrupting. When Grant described our diagnostic capacity, he included my injector bench and laptop. When he described leadership, he referred to my 42 years of mechanical experience, counting the decade I had worked before opening the shop. My photograph appeared on a slide labeled Technical Continuity. Dana asked how many hours per week I would remain on site. Eric said 20 to 25. I said, "That hasn't been agreed." Louise stopped taking notes. Grant closed his mouth. Dana placed her pen on the table. "Perhaps we should understand what has been agreed." Eric leaned forward. "Walter's adjusting to the timing. The structure itself has been planned for months." "Not with me," I said. Eric's hand flattened against the tabletop. "Dad, you asked a direct question." I told Dana. "I'm giving you a direct answer." She turned to Grant. "Who would supervise technical work if Walter decides not to participate?" "Tasha Nguyen is qualified to lead most repairs," Grant said. "Most?" "Walter holds the highest level of certification in the shop and owns several pieces of specialized equipment included in the proposal." Dana looked at Eric. "The company doesn't own the equipment?" "It's available to the company," he said. "Under what agreement?" "A long-standing arrangement with Walter." "Does it continue through the contract term?" Eric's face reddened. "We are formalizing that." Dana gathered the pages in front of her. "Then it sounds as though we're early." "We're not," Eric said. "The operational plan is complete. The technical resources aren't." "They will be." He looked at me. It was not quite a plea. It was more like an instruction he hoped I would accept without making him say it. Dana waited. I thought about the 26 Red Plains vehicles, the drivers who depended on them, the work the contract could provide, and the raises Eric had mentioned. I also thought about the visitor badge and the word declining. "I will finish reviewing what you've represented about me," I said. "Until then, don't assume my participation." Dana nodded. "That's reasonable." Eric pushed back from the table. "Can we take 5 minutes?" "Of course," she said. He walked out through the parts cage and motioned for me to follow. We stopped in the narrow hallway beside the restroom. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "Correcting an answer. You're humiliating me. I did not remove your name from the building. You could have waited until after the meeting. You could have waited until after asking me. This contract keeps us alive. You said we were flat. Now we're dying? You don't see the books every day. I own 40%. Show them to me." Marisol sends monthly reports. The reports show profit. Accounting profit. What does that mean here? It means cash is tighter than it looks. Why? Expansion costs, recruiting, software, consulting, Grant, among other things. How much have you paid him? That is not relevant right now. It became relevant when you stopped paying me. His eyes moved toward the meeting room. Please, tell them you're in for 90 days. We'll settle everything else tonight. No. Why? Because this morning you described me as a visitor. An hour later, I became the foundation of your proposal. You are twisting this. Then untwist it. What do you want from me? I want you to help me secure one account without reminding everyone that you started the company before I was born. What happens after 90 days? You step back. Completely? Mostly. Do I keep an office? We can create a workspace. Do I keep access? Of course. I held up the key that no longer worked. Eric looked at it, then away. That was badly handled. By whom? Me. It was the first admission he made all morning. Why didn't you tell me? He put both hands against the hallway wall and lowered his head for a second. Because every time I try to change something, you find 10 reasons it worked better before. Give me an example. The scheduling software. It double-booked 3 bays. For 1 week. The outside call center. It improved answer rates. It told Mrs. Danner we had no record of servicing her trucks for 18 years. That was a migration error. You asked for examples. He dropped his hands. This is what I mean. You remember every mistake and carry it forever. That still doesn't explain telling Grant I'm declining. His face emptied. I had not planned to reveal that Grant told me. Eric glanced toward the meeting room, then back at me. He misunderstood. He used your word. I said you were declining to learn the new systems. No, you didn't. Were you recording him? Listen to yourself. Then how do I know what was said? You don't. You know what you told him. Eric's breathing quickened. I was trying to explain why the transition needed to be handled carefully. By lying about my mind? I did not say you had dementia. That's a low bar. You forget things. Everybody forgets things. You approved the weekend overtime in August, then acted surprised when payroll came. You texted me the request while I was driving. I said we would discuss it. You replied, thumbs up. That means I saw it. To every person under 40, it means yes. Despite myself, I almost laughed. The argument was so ordinary that for half a second I could see a path back to normal. Then I remembered Grant's face when he said declining. What else did you tell people? I asked. Nothing. Did you tell customers? No. Employees? No. Dana? Absolutely not. Then correct Grant. After the meeting. Now. I'm not dragging him into a family misunderstanding while a customer waits. You dragged him in 7 months ago. Dana opened the meeting room door. We can reschedule, she said. Her tone made clear she had heard at least part of us. Eric straightened. That won't be necessary. I think it might. She looked at me. Walter, I hope you'll call when you've reviewed the proposal. We need a provider with clear commitments. You'll have that, Eric said. Dana picked up her folder. Not today. Luis followed her out. Grant walked them to the front entrance. Eric remained in the hallway, staring at the floor. The shop sounds filled the space between us. Air tools, a rolling cart, the beep of a truck backing out. You cost us the contract, he said. She said reschedule. That's corporate language, for no. Then build a proposal you can support without using me. We can't meet the qualifications without you. That should have been part of our conversation. I thought you cared whether this place survived. I do. You have a strange way of showing it. He walked past me and shut himself inside my former office. Grant returned from the parking lot. They'll reconsider after clarification, he said. Did Eric tell you to say that? No. Do you believe it? Maybe. He looked through the glass at Eric. He should have talked to you. Yes, he was convinced you'd block the entire plan. Did you encourage him to do this overnight? I encouraged a clear announcement and immediate role definitions. I did not know he planned to change the locks before speaking to you. Would that have mattered? Yes. Enough to stop you taking the job? He looked at the former office. I don't know. It was not the answer I wanted, but it sounded true. Marisol approached with a printed packet held against her chest. Walter, can I talk to you? We went outside to the service yard. She waited until the door closed. I need you to look at something before Eric changes my access. Why would he change your access? Because I questioned payments. She handed me the packet. The first page was a list of vendor transactions from the previous 7 months. Most were familiar. Parts suppliers, uniforms, waste disposal, insurance, software. Several payments went to Bell Operations Group. The amounts began at $4,000 a month and increased to $9,000 in July. Another payment, marked branding research, had gone to a company called Northline Growth Partners. The address matched Bell Operations Group. Grant's company? I asked. I think so. Did Eric approve these? Yes. What did we receive? Planning, recruiting, the Red Plains proposal, the new software. How much total? 70. 6,000 through September. I went through the pages again. Why wasn't this in the monthly reports? It was included under outside services. Eric changed the report format in April. You sent those reports. The summary comes from the software. I should have opened the category sooner. Why did you now? Because payroll was short last Friday. I looked up. How short? We covered it. Eric moved money from the tax reserve. How much? 23,000. Did he put it back? Not yet. Does Grant know? I don't know. Does Helen? No. Anyone else? Eric and me. She rubbed her hands together, then stopped. Walter, he told me not to bother you because stress makes you confused. I stared at the packet. Those were his words? He said you'd been having episodes. What episodes? He mentioned the payroll approval in August and a customer appointment you forgot. Which appointment? Harper, Ag. I remembered it immediately. Eric had moved their appointment from Thursday to Tuesday in the new scheduling system without calling them or me. When they arrived Thursday, he told them I had confused the date. At the time, I assumed he was covering a software mistake in front of the customer. Did he say a doctor diagnosed anything? No. Did you believe him? Her face pinched. For about a week. Why did you stop? Because you remembered every back-ordered part number while he forgot to submit the insurance renewal. I handed the packet back, but she pushed it toward me. Keep it. Is this company information you're allowed to give me? You're an owner. That doesn't answer whether you'll get fired. I printed an owner financial report. I didn't steal anything. Why now? Because he used your name to get everyone to cooperate. He said the changes were for your health. Then this morning, he treated you like a trespasser. Through the door window, I could see Eric standing in the former office while Grant spoke to him. My son had one hand against his forehead. For years, whenever he was overwhelmed, I stepped in before he asked. I handled the angry customer, covered the missed payment, stayed late, or explained away the mistake. I had called it protecting him. Helen had called it preventing him from becoming responsible. I took the packet. Don't print anything else, I said. Don't access anything you normally wouldn't. What are you going to do? First, I'm going to read what I supposedly agreed to. I returned to the storage room table and opened the Red Plains folder. Grant had left it there. Eric's proposal described me as remaining with the company through a multi-year advisory phase, not 90 days. It named me as technical supervisor, after-hours escalation, contact, and trainer for future hires. Attached to the equipment list was a statement that the company had full operational access to all tools and machinery on the premises. At the bottom of the technical staffing page was a blank signature block with my name typed beneath it. Walter Keene, founder and senior technical advisor. The space above my name was empty. Beside the folder sat the visitor badge. I picked it up, carried both items to Bay One, and placed them on top of my red tool chest. Then I found a roll of masking tape, covered the laminated company asset tag Eric had tied to the handle, and wrote Walter Keene Personal Property across it in thick black marker. When Eric came out of the office, he stopped several feet away and read the new label. Take that off, he said. Not yet. You're making a spectacle. I'm identifying my property. We need to talk at home. No. We need to talk here. After I review the company records and the proposal carrying my name. Marisol had no right to give you internal reports. I have 40% of the company. You're not involved in daily management. I am involved when payroll comes from the tax reserve. His eyes moved to Marisol. She stood behind the counter without looking away. Grant stepped out of the office, his jacket now folded over one arm. What tax reserve? He asked. Eric turned sharply. That's a temporary cash flow adjustment. You told me payroll was fully covered through the end of the year. It is. Then why move tax money? Because Dana delayed a deposit. That isn't what Marisol's report shows, I said. Eric looked back at me. You've had those numbers for 10 minutes, and now you're an expert? No, I'm an owner asking why the reserve is short. I will replace it after Red Plains pays the onboarding fee. The contract you told them we could perform with an advisor who never agreed. I said I would fix this tonight. You said we would settle everything after I gave you 90 days. Same thing. It isn't. Grant placed his jacket on the counter. Eric, did you plan to use the onboarding payment to restore the tax reserve? Eric's expression hardened. That's a company matter. My invoices are part of the reason cash is tight. Your work created the opportunity. The opportunity just drove away. Because my father decided to prove a point, I looked at the proposal, the empty signature space, and the badge. I'm not signing this today. Nobody asked you to. You were going to, eventually. After the customer heard I had already agreed, Eric stepped closer to me. What do you want? His voice was louder now, and every technician in the shop could hear him. Do you want me to put the old letters back up? Give you your office? Fire Grant? Tell everyone I'm still the child who needs his father's permission? I want access to the records of the company I own. Fine. I want every reference to my health corrected. His mouth tightened. Fine. I want my property removed from the asset list unless there is a written agreement I approve. We can discuss that. And until we do, nobody uses my certifications, photograph, biography, or signature block in another proposal. Then we lose Red Plains, then make me a real offer instead of a badge. He looked down at the badge on the tool chest. You're willing to hurt everybody here because your feelings got bruised. My feelings are not in that folder. I tapped the page listing me as the technical supervisor. My name is. Same thing to you. He turned toward the office. I'm done for today. Eric. He kept walking. Change my key back before you leave. He stopped, but did not turn. You're just helping now, he said. Visitors don't need keys. Then he entered the office and closed the door. I looked at Marisol. Give me a list of open customer commitments through Friday, I said. Nothing beyond your normal access. Tasha came over, wiping her hands on a rag. What should we do about the trucks? Finish the ones already approved. Don't accept new fleet work under my supervision. Grant stood beside the counter, studying the financial packet Marisol had printed. And me? He asked. I looked at the man my son wanted me to train, then at the copied certifications in the open folder. You can start by showing me every document where Eric used my name. Final part 2 of 4. Grant carried the Red Plains folder back into the storage room and opened his laptop beside it. There are 4 versions, he said. The first one still has Keen Diesel on the cover. I pulled out a chair. Marisol remained near the doorway, and Tasha stood several feet behind her with the rag still in one hand. Through the glass, Eric could see all of us. He stayed in my former office for perhaps 30 seconds before coming out. No, he said. We are not conducting an internal review in the middle of a workday. Grant looked up. Walter asked where his name was used. And I'll answer him privately. You've had 7 months for private, I said. Eric reached for the folder, but Grant placed his hand on it. These are my copies. That stopped him. Eric looked at Grant's hand, then at his face. You work for this company. My firm works under a consulting agreement, which I can terminate. You can. Grant removed his hand, but Eric did not take the folder. I also need to know whether I was given accurate authority to prepare these materials. Eric glanced toward Tasha and Marisol. Everybody back to work. Tasha folded the rag and tucked it into her back pocket. My truck's waiting on a part. Then find something else. Like listening? Eric pointed toward Bay 2. Go. I turned to her. Check the coolant leak on the Martin produce unit. It came back yesterday. She gave me a small nod and walked away. Eric watched her go. You don't assign work anymore. Then assign it yourself before telling people to leave. Marisol started toward the counter, but I asked her to stay. She doesn't need to be part of this, Eric said. She processed the payments. She processes every payment. Which is why she can explain what the reports show. She already violated my instructions. Marisol's back straightened. Your instruction was to code Grant's invoices under outside services. I did that. You had no reason to print a detailed report. Walter asked for the records. He didn't know to ask until you went looking for trouble. Payroll was trouble before I printed anything. Eric stared at her. Go answer the phones. She looked at me, then returned to the counter. I could see she regretted leaving, but she had customers waiting, and I did not ask her to risk more than she already had. Grant turned the laptop so I could see the screen. The first proposal, dated in April, listed the company as Keene Diesel Service and named Eric as operations manager, me as owner and technical director, and Grant's firm as an outside systems advisor. It described Red Plains as a possible growth account and made no mention of retirement, health, or a name change. The second version, dated in June, changed Eric's title to president and mine to founder and senior advisor. The third, dated in August, introduced Redline Fleet Solutions as a trade name and included the paragraph about my planned transition from daily responsibilities. The final version was the one on the table. Who wrote the planned transition language? I asked. Grant scrolled to a comment box. Eric Keene. I supplied the general structure, Grant said. Eric made the ownership and leadership edits. Show him the email, Eric said. Which one? The one where he approved stepping back. Grant searched his inbox. Eric stood over his shoulder, directing him through folders until Grant opened a message from February. It had been sent by Eric to both Grant and me, though I did not recognize the subject line. 5-year direction. Grant clicked it open. Eric had written 3 paragraphs about growth, leadership, and family succession. At the bottom, he asked whether we could meet to discuss a plan that would let me reduce my hours over the next 2 years. My reply was one sentence. Looks fine to discuss after tax season. That is your approval, Eric said. Approval to discuss. You said it looked fine. The discussion looked fine. You always do this. Do what? Use ordinary language until it matters, then turn every word into a contract. I did not approve a visitor badge. The badge is not the issue. It was when I arrived. Grant continued through the messages. There were meeting invitations I had declined because the titles were generic. Strategy review, future structure, brand workshop. 2 had been scheduled during times Eric knew I was on service calls. 1 had been placed on the calendar for a Friday when Helen and I were in Branson for her sister's anniversary. Eric had written notes afterward stating, Walter unable to attend, proceeding with preliminary planning. You knew where I was, I said. I couldn't pause the company every time you went somewhere. You scheduled it after I told you I'd be gone. Because Grant was available. Did you tell him I was unavailable? Grant answered. Eric said you preferred not to participate in administrative planning. He does, Eric said. You hate meetings. I hate meetings where nobody decides anything. This one seems to have decided plenty. Grant opened a presentation from July. One slide was titled, Leadership Risk. Beneath it were 3 bullet points, founder dependence, delayed technology adoption, and uncertain succession. A note in the margin referred to possible cognitive resistance. I read it twice. What is cognitive resistance? Grant looked uncomfortable. That phrase came from a planning conversation. Whose phrase? Mine. He paused. But I meant resistance caused by deeply established habits, not cognitive impairment. Did you explain that to anyone who saw this? Only Eric and me saw the deck. Eric crossed his arms. Nobody accused you of being impaired. You told Marisol I was having episodes. I told her stress was affecting you. You told Grant I was declining. I said your willingness to adapt was declining. Then why did my health become the reason Marisol shouldn't show me financial reports? Because you react like this. He pointed at the laptop, the folder, and the people watching through the glass. You turn one mistake into an investigation. Payroll came out of the tax reserve. For 4 days. It's still out. Because you damaged the Red Plains meeting. You moved it before the meeting. His hand rose, then dropped. I was covering a timing problem. With money we owe. With company money. Set aside for taxes. Temporarily. Did you tell me? You aren't involved in daily cash decisions. Did you tell the accountant? I know what I'm doing. Grant closed the laptop halfway. Eric, when were you planning to tell me? Tell you what? That my September payment contributed to a payroll shortage. It didn't. Customer receivables contributed to the shortage. My invoice was $9,000. For work completed. And the invoice due next week? Eric did not answer. Grant opened the laptop again and pulled up his consulting agreement. The monthly retainer increased to $12,000 beginning in October, with a $25,000 success fee if Red Plains signed. There was also a provision granting Grant the general manager position for at least 18 months after contract execution, at a salary higher than Eric had ever paid himself. You were going to pay this? I asked. The contract supports it. Without the contract? We'd adjust. Does the company have $12,000 for next month? Yes. From where? Receivables. Which ones? I don't have to perform the books for you beside a tool chest. Then give me access. You have owner reports. Summaries you changed. Because the old format was useless. Grant leaned back. Walter should have access to the underlying financials. Eric turned on him. Stay out of the ownership issue. You placed my agreement inside it. Your agreement is valid. That's not what I said. For a man who claimed to manage organizations, Grant seemed to be discovering that our shop did not behave like a chart. People had loyalties, old injuries, and habits no software could label without getting some part wrong. He gathered the 4 proposal versions into one electronic folder and copied them to a flash drive. He held it toward me. Eric stepped between us. You are not giving him company files. They contain Walter's personal qualifications and image, Grant said. They also show how my work was used. He has a legitimate reason to review them. Email them to counsel. Whose counsel? I asked. The company's. We don't have company counsel. We do now. Since when? August. Name? Eric hesitated. Carver and Lane. I knew the firm. They handled small business sales and commercial leases. Why did we hire a transaction firm for a fleet contract? They do general business work. How much have we paid them? I don't know off the top of my head. Marisol will. Leave her out of it. You used company money. She keeps the company books. I held out my hand. Grant passed me the flash drive. Eric did not stop him, though every muscle in his face looked ready to. I put it into my shirt pocket beside his old note. I'm taking my records home, I said. You are not removing originals. Copies. You need to sign a confidentiality agreement. For information about myself? For customer and company information. Then prepare one that doesn't prevent me from reviewing my own investment. I'm not taking instructions from you. You asked me to help. I asked you to train Grant, not tear through 7 months of planning. Grant looked at him. You said Walter supported the transition. Eric faced him. He did until this morning. No, I said. I supported hiring help. You built everything else around that sentence. The front bell rang, and a man in a tan work jacket entered carrying the keys to a delivery truck. Marisol greeted him, but he pointed toward me. Walter, you got a minute? The refrigeration unit's cutting out again. It was Pete Hollis from Hollis Family Foods. His company had brought trucks to us since his father ran it. Eric walked over before I could answer. Grant can get you scheduled. Pete looked at Grant, then at me. Who's Grant? Our new general manager. Where's your sign? We're updating the brand. I liked the old sign. The service won't change. Pete held up the keys. Walter knows this unit. Eric reached for them. We all have access to the history. Pete kept his hand closed. Is Walter working on it? The question seemed simple, but everyone heard what sat underneath it. Eric glanced at me. Walter's transitioning into an advisory role. Pete frowned. What does that mean? It means I'm not taking new work under an agreement I haven't seen, I said. Is that a no? For today, yes. Pete looked disappointed, but not angry. You all right? I'm fine. Eric stepped closer. We can service the truck. Pete lowered his voice. Not if you two are sorting something out. I need it back by Thursday. Tasha can handle it, Eric said. Tasha called from Bay 3. I'm booked through Friday. Cody can start diagnostics. Pete shook his head. I'll take it to Barnes. Barnes Diesel was 12 miles north and had tried for years to win our food delivery accounts. We can make room, Eric said. You just said your lead mechanic was booked. Walter can advise. Pete looked at my visitor badge on the tool chest, then at the empty wall. Call me when Walter knows whether he works here. He left with his keys. Eric watched him through the window until the truck pulled away. There, he said quietly. That is what you're doing. He asked a question. You could have said yes. So could you, before changing my role. Every customer who walks out makes this harder to repair. Then stop giving them answers that aren't true. He went into the office again. This time, he locked the door. I heard the bolt slide from inside. Grant remained at the table, reviewing emails. Marisol brought me the open work list and a cup of coffee in a paper cup because my mug was still boxed. There's something else, she said. Not here. I looked toward the office. Eric's blinds were partly closed, though they had never had blinds before. When? Lunch. Where? The taco place on 11th. Bring only what you normally handle. I know. Her voice sounded tired. I'm not trying to trap him. Neither am I. That was true then. I still believed the day could end with Eric admitting he had rushed, restoring my access, and presenting an honest proposal. I imagined we would argue hard, perhaps for weeks, but the business would remain ours. Father and son. Different titles, different hours, same place. I had spent so many years stepping between Eric and the worst result that I assumed there would always be a middle position where I could stand. At 11:40, a parts delivery arrived. 2 boxes were addressed to Redline Fleet Solutions, even though the name was not yet on the building. One contained tablets for technicians. The other held red and black uniform patches. Eric came out of the office to sign. Tasha picked up one patch and turned it over. You ordered these before telling us. Uniform changes are normal. My current shirts have Keen Diesel stitched on them. You'll receive replacements. I paid for 2 of those shirts myself. Submit a receipt. It was 4 years ago. Then we'll provide replacements. She put the patch back. I'm not wearing it until I know who I work for. You work for the same company. Then why does it have a different name? Because companies rebrand. Does Walter own Redline? Eric looked at me. Redline is the company's trade name. That wasn't her question, I said. Walter owns 40% of the operating company. Which one? Tasha asked. Eric's face changed before he answered, and that change stayed with me. Keen Diesel Service, he said. Redline is just the new public name. So yes? Yes, through his ownership. Tasha looked at me. Did you register the name? I shook my head. Eric picked up the box. Enough. Everyone has jobs. Who owns the Redline name? I asked. The company. Show me. Later. Today. I said later. He carried the patches into the office and locked the door again. At noon, I drove to the taco place in my old Ford pickup. Marisol arrived 5 minutes afterward and sat across from me in a booth near the back. She had brought no papers. She placed her phone face down between us. I checked the payment system because you asked about Carver and Lane, she said. That is within my normal work. How much? 31,000 since June. For what? The invoices say restructuring, intellectual property, management services, and asset transfer planning. I put down the plastic fork I had not yet used. Asset transfer? I asked Eric in August. He said it was for moving equipment between the original company and a new operating division. What new division? He told me Redline. Is Redline owned by Keen Diesel? I don't know. You said the invoices mention asset transfer. They do. I never saw an executed agreement. Did you pay fees to register the name? Yes. A filing service in Delaware and another in Oklahoma. Why Delaware? I asked. Eric said Grant preferred it. Did you code those under outside services too? Legal and professional. Was my name on any filing? Not that I saw. Who authorized the payments? Eric. She lifted her eyes. Walter. I should have called you in June. Why didn't you? Because Eric said you were tired of the office side. And because he is the majority owner. 60% is not 100. I know. Did he tell you I approved a new company? He said the family transition was settled. It was the same phrase he had used with Grant. I looked through the window at the traffic moving along 11th Street. A city bus stopped, lowered itself, and let an older woman climb aboard with 2 grocery bags. The driver waited until she sat down before moving. An ordinary bit of patience. I found myself watching until the bus disappeared. I need copies of the invoices, I said. I can provide owner records, but Eric may fire me. Then don't do anything until I understand what this is. If he changes my permissions, I won't be able to. Can he? Yes. Then send only the monthly vendor ledger and legal invoices already paid. Nothing else. Use the company email and copy him. He'll know. He should. She turned her phone over, then back down. There is one more thing. Go ahead. He asked me last week whether the building lease allows assignment. What did you say? That I didn't know. It does not. Are you sure? I wrote it with our accountant when the company reorganized. The tenant is Keen Diesel Service. No sublease or assignment without my written approval. Maybe that protects you. From what? She looked toward the window instead of answering. I don't know yet. After lunch, I drove home, rather than returning immediately. Helen was at the kitchen table with my boxes open around her. She had set the crooked Keen and Son plaque upright against the sugar jar. My coffee mug was in the sink. She poured me a fresh cup without asking whether I wanted one. You look older than you did this morning, she said. That's efficient. Usually takes me a year. She did not laugh. I handed her the flash drive and explained the proposals, the consulting payments, the tax reserve, and the possible new company. I expected her to be shocked. Instead, she looked angry in the contained way that had once made hospital administrators rethink decisions without knowing why. He came here in July, she said. Eric? He asked about your retirement accounts. Why? He said he wanted to make sure we were secure if you stopped taking draws from the company. What did you tell him? That our finances were none of his business unless we asked for help. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought he was worried about us. She folded her hands. He also asked whether the building had a mortgage. It doesn't. I told him that. I stared at the plaque beside the sugar jar. Did he ask who inherits it? No. Did he ask about transferring it? No, Walter. What has he done? I don't know. Then find out before you go back. There are trucks in the bays. The shop survived lunch without you for years. Not this lunch. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. You are doing it again. Doing what? Thinking that if you stay close enough, you can keep Eric from making the worst choice. Somebody has to keep the work moving. That is not the same thing. I turned my hand beneath hers and held it. If I walk away now, employees could lose work. Customers could lose trucks. Eric could make a bad cash problem worse. And if you stay? I looked at the boxes. I don't know. That is why you read first. She plugged the flash drive into our home computer. We opened Grant's files one by one. Most matched what he had shown me. One folder, marked Archive, contained earlier branding notes and draft organizational charts. In the April chart, Keen Diesel remained the operating company. In June, A second box appeared beneath it. Redline Fleet Management, wholly owned subsidiary. In August, the lines changed. Redline Fleet Solutions sat beside Keen Diesel rather than beneath it. Eric's name appeared under Redline with 70%. Grant Bell's name appeared with 30%. My name appeared only beneath Keen Diesel. That might be a draft, Helen said. Yes. Was it sent? I checked the file details. Grant had created it, but Eric had modified it 2 days later. A comment beside my name read, Walter retains legacy entity and property income. No operational involvement after transition period. Helen read it twice. Legacy entity, she said. Like an old coat. It could mean they planned for Keen Diesel to own Redline later. Then why list Eric and Grant personally? I did not have an answer. Another file was titled Customer Migration Schedule. It listed accounts by revenue, contract length, and relationship risk. Longtime local customers remained under Keen Diesel. Larger fleet customers were marked for transfer to Redline after contract renewal. In a notes column, several accounts carried the phrase founder sensitive. Hollis Family Foods was one. Martin Produce was another. The note beside Red Plains said technical qualifications dependent on Walter through onboarding. They were going to move the profitable accounts, Helen said. Draft. Stop saying draft as though drafts are written by ghosts. Nothing may be signed. Then you need to know before something is. I opened the legal folder. Most documents were incomplete templates. One was an unsigned services agreement under which Keen Diesel would provide Redline with shop space, equipment, technicians, and technical supervision at cost for the first year. At cost meant Redline could use the people and resources without paying any profit to the company I partly owned. Redline would own new customer contracts and all associated branding. This leaves Keen Diesel carrying payroll, I said. Helen leaned closer. And Redline receives the fleet money. If executed, who owns Redline? According to the chart, Eric and Grant. Then your son planned to move the best work into a company you do not own while your company pays the workers. I stood and walked to the sink. My mug sat beneath the faucet with a ring of coffee at the bottom. I washed it, dried it, and put it in the cabinet. It was something to do with my hands. Maybe they planned to compensate Keen Diesel later. Where? The agreements aren't final. Where, Walter? I don't see it. She turned back to the screen. Call Eric. Not yet. Why? Because if I accuse him before I know what is signed, he'll say I misunderstood planning documents. Did you? I don't know. You know enough to ask. I asked all morning. Helen stood. No, you asked why he moved your desk. This is not about your desk. I looked at her. That sentence landed harder than anything Eric had said. All morning I had treated the badge, the sign, and the locked door as the center of the injury. They were personal, and they mattered, but the files suggested something larger and quieter. My son might not merely be pushing me out of management. He might be moving the work, reputation, and future of the company into a place where my ownership no longer reached. I'm going back, I said. Take copies. I will. And do not promise him 90 days. I won't. You say that now. Helen. He will look frightened. He will say the employees need you. He will say one fleet deal fixes everything. Then you will agree to help for a week, and a week will become whatever he needs. I'm not that easy. She gave me the look she had used for 38 years whenever I said something plainly untrue. I printed the organization chart, customer migration schedule, and draft services agreement. Before leaving, I put the wooden plaque into my truck rather than returning it to the box. At the shop, a Martin Produce truck blocked the driveway. Steam rose from beneath its hood. Tasha was outside waving the driver toward the side lot. The coolant leak she had been asked to inspect had worsened on a delivery route. Hose fitting split, she said when I approached. Cody missed the hairline crack yesterday. Can it move? Not without dumping the rest. Where's the service truck? Eric sent it to Broken Arrow with Grant. For what? They're showing a potential customer our mobile setup. Who approved that? She gave me a tired look. You know who. What do you need? The portable pressure kit and the hose crimper. Both belonged to me. The kit was in my locked tool chest. The crimper sat in the equipment room with a company inventory tag already tied to it. The Martin driver climbed down. "I've got frozen product on board," he said. "How long?" 40 minutes if we have the right fitting, Tasha said. 2 hours if we send for one. I unlocked my tool chest. Helen's warning followed me as clearly as if she stood beside the bay. A week becomes whatever he needs. I took out the pressure kit anyway. "Use the crimper," I told Tasha. "We'll document this as emergency use of my equipment." She raised an eyebrow. "Document it to who?" "Marisol." We repaired the truck in 35 minutes. I held the light while Tasha cut and crimped the replacement hose. Cody cleaned spilled coolant and kept apologizing until she told him to stop talking and watch the fitting. When the engine held pressure, the driver shook my hand. "Knew you'd get it," he said. Eric and Grant returned just as the truck pulled away. Eric saw the wet pavement, the open tool chest, and the paperwork in my hand. "What happened?" "Martin unit lost coolant." "You fixed it?" "Tasha fixed it." "Using the mobile kit?" "Using my pressure kit and crimper." "Good." "Not good." "Necessary." He looked at the printed pages. "What are those?" I held up the organization chart. "You tell me." The color left his face. Grant moved closer. "Where did you get that?" "Your archive folder." "That chart was never approved." "Why does Redline belong to you and Eric?" Grant looked at Eric. "We discussed an equity incentive if I built the fleet division." "A division of what?" The structure was unresolved. "The customer migration schedule looks resolved." Eric reached for the pages. I stepped back. "Those are confidential drafts. They concern my customers, employees, equipment, building, and company. They are scenarios." "Why am I not in the new company?" "Because Redline was intended to be management-owned. Keen Diesel is already management-owned. You don't manage it. I own 40%. That is not the same. It is when the old company supplies labor at cost while the new one collects the contract revenue." Grant looked at the services agreement. "That version should have included a management fee. It doesn't. It was incomplete." "Did you intend to sign it?" "Not in that form." "Did Eric?" Grant did not answer. Eric stepped between us. "Redline was a way to bring Grant in without forcing you to sell shares. You could have offered him shares in Keen Diesel. You would have refused. You never asked. Because you would have refused. Then you designed around me." "I designed around a deadlock." "There was no deadlock. There was no conversation." "That is the deadlock." He spoke louder than he needed to, then lowered his voice. "You think ownership means everything waits until you feel comfortable. I have spent 6 years trying to grow a business built for 2008. You planned to move the growth out of the company I own. Because you will not let the company change. You used its cash to build another one. Redline has no bank account. Does it exist?" He looked away. "It was formed." "When?" "August." "Owners?" He did not answer. Grant did. "Eric owns 70%. My firm owns 30%. The shop around us seemed to become strangely precise. The red uniform patches visible through the office window. The pale squares over the bays. The new tablets on the counter. My visitor badge resting on the tool chest. Each had looked like part of a rushed rebrand. Together they were the furnishings of a company already created without me. "Does Keen Diesel own any part of Redline?" I asked. "Not currently," Grant said. "Was that supposed to change?" The options included a licensing arrangement, a subsidiary structure, or a joint venture. "Which did you file?" "A separate limited liability company. With my son and you." "Yes," Eric's voice cracked with frustration. "It was a shell. Nothing had been transferred. You bought uniforms, marketing materials. You paid legal fees with Keen Diesel money. Because Keen Diesel would benefit." "How?" "Through service revenue. At cost. That agreement was not final. Would I receive Red Plains profits through my 40%? You would receive rent and consulting pay." "Would I own the customer contract?" "Redline would." Would Keen Diesel own it? No. Would my employees work on the trucks? Yes. Would my equipment be used? Yes. Would my license be used during onboarding? Would my company carry payroll? Initially. And you call that preserving my ownership? Eric moved closer until only a few feet separated us. I call it building something that does not die when you finally leave. Then build it with your own money, workers, building, equipment, and name. That is impossible at the beginning. So you needed mine. I needed cooperation. You needed permission. You would have said no. You do not get to convert a guessed no into a yes. His face tightened. I was going to make you whole. With what? A consulting agreement. Increased rent. A guaranteed distribution from the old company. The old company, after you moved its best customers, we were keeping local accounts. The founder. Sensitive ones. He looked at Grant. Why did you leave that file accessible? Grant's expression hardened. Do not make this about file access. It is your archive. It is our planning work, and Walter had a right to see anything using his name or property. You didn't say that in March. In March, you told me he agreed. Eric turned toward me. I did this because every path with you ends the same way. You say you are thinking. You wait. You find a risk. Then you keep things exactly as they are. That does not give you my half of the foundation. 40%. My building and equipment are not 40%. He laughed once. There it is. The building. The tools. The name. Every conversation comes back to what belongs to Walter. I looked at the printed chart. This one does. You have taken more from this business than anyone. I built it. And I have spent 6 years making it function while you walk through the bays correcting everyone. You drew a salary. Less than I could earn elsewhere. Then why stay? The question came out sharper than I intended. Eric's expression changed. For a moment he looked younger, not softer, just exposed. Because I thought it would become mine, he said. You own 60% of a company you still treat like your garage. So you plan to empty it into another company. I plan to create something I could lead without asking whether you approved the font, using everything I built. Using what I spent 6 years expanding, with company money, which I earned, which all of us earned. And you still get 40 cents of every dollar while second-guessing me. Not from Redline. He stopped. The silence after that was not dramatic. A phone rang. Cody dropped a wrench in Bay 3. A delivery driver asked Marisol where to leave 2 brake drums. Life kept moving while the sentence sat between us. Eric walked into the office and shut the door, but this time he did not lock it. Grant stayed beside the tool chest. I did not understand that you had not approved any separate structure, he said. What did you understand? That Eric was buying your operational interest over time while you retained the building and a passive stake in the legacy company. Buying it with what? Future distributions and consulting compensation. Money earned using my equipment and license. Partly. Did you see a purchase agreement? Draft term sheets. Signed? No. Did you ask why? Eric said family terms were still being documented. That should have bothered you. It does now. It should have then. He nodded once. Yes. Tasha approached us. Are we Redline employees? She asked. No, I said. You are employed by Keen Diesel. Is that changing? Not without something in writing. Would anyone tell us if it did? Grant looked toward Eric's office. They should. That is not an answer. No, I said. It is not. I folded the chart and put it back with the other pages. Finish today's work. Do not accept any redline paperwork, uniforms, assignments, or accounts until you know who employs you. Can Eric fire me for that? He can manage Keen Diesel staff under the operating agreement. Her mouth tightened. So yes, he can make employment decisions. He cannot make you an employee of another company without telling you. That sounds like yes, with extra words. It is. She looked at the office. I need this job. I know. Then fix whatever this is before he makes us choose. She returned to her bay. Her words stayed with me. I had been measuring the problem by what Eric was taking from me: my name, office, authority, reputation, equipment, and share of future work. Tasha reminded me that the shop was not only a dispute between two owners. 9 people depended on wages, insurance, schedules, and promises. Neither of us had the right to treat casually. I walked into the office without knocking. Eric sat behind a temporary desk built from the folding table. My old framed photograph of him had been placed face down on a shelf. "We need rules until this is sorted," I said. "Get out. No employee is transferred to Redline, no customer is transferred, no equipment leaves the property, no new contract uses my name or certification. Existing Keen Diesel work continues. You cannot issue operational rules. Then call an owner meeting. I own the majority. The operating agreement requires both members for transactions involving related companies." His eyes moved to the folder under my arm. "You read it? I wrote it. That clause was meant to stop me from paying myself through side deals. Redline is a related company. Nothing has been transferred. Then these rules should be easy. You are trying to freeze the company. I am trying to keep you from moving it while we argue. You are proving why Redline had to be separate. Because I can stop you? Because you stop everything. Call the meeting. Fine, tomorrow at 8. With full records. You'll have them. And Grant? He is not an owner. He owns 30% of Redline. This is a Keen Diesel meeting. Then Redline documents still come because Keen Diesel paid for them." Eric stared at me for several seconds. 8 o'clock, he said. "Do not come in before then. My access? I'll give you a temporary code. Permanent code. After the meeting. You are still treating me like a visitor, because I cannot trust you not to interfere. With my own company. With mine. There it is." "What?" "You stopped saying ours." He looked toward the face-down photograph. "Maybe it was never ours." I left before I answered in anger. The next morning, my temporary code opened the front door at 7:58. Eric, Grant, Marisol, and a lawyer named Peter Carver were already in the conference area. The parts shelves had been pushed farther back, making room for another chair. Peter was in his early 50s, narrow-faced, with a careful manner that suggested he billed for complete sentences. He introduced himself as company counsel. "Which company?" I asked. "Keen Diesel Service." "Do you also represent Redline Fleet Solutions?" "My firm assisted with formation." "Do you represent Eric personally?" "We have advised him on certain matters." "Then I want that clear before we begin." Peter looked at Eric. "That is fair." I sat beside Marisol, rather than across from my son. Grant placed 2 binders on the table. Eric had brought financial statements, consulting invoices, formation documents, and the draft agreements. For nearly 2 hours, we worked through them. The facts were less theatrical than my anger had made them, and more troubling than Eric had admitted. Keen Diesel was not insolvent. It was profitable on paper, but Eric had spent heavily on consulting, legal work, software, recruiting, branding, and preparations for a fleet division that had not yet produced revenue. Customer payments were slow, parts costs had risen, and he had delayed collecting several overdue accounts because he did not want to look desperate during the Red Plains discussions. The tax reserve transfer had covered payroll and 2 supplier drafts. He expected to replace it with the Red Plains onboarding payment and a line of credit secured by future contract revenue. "Did the bank approve that line?" I asked. "Conditionally," Eric said. "Conditions?" "Executed Red Plains agreement, equipment access, facility commitment, and technical leadership." "Me. Partly. My building. The lease. My equipment. The operating company's access to it, which you plan to assign to Redline." Peter raised one hand. "No assignment occurred." "Was one drafted?" "A services arrangement was drafted. At cost. That language was preliminary. Was I shown it?" "No." "Was my approval required?" Peter chose his words. "For an arrangement involving the use of personally owned equipment and any assignment of the premises, yes." "For transferring Keen Diesel customers to a company owned by Eric and Grant?" The operating agreement gives Eric broad management authority, but related party transactions above a specified amount require both members' approval. Was that why nothing was signed? Eric answered before the lawyer could. Nothing was signed because Red Plains had not committed. So after they committed, you would have asked me, yes. Before or after announcing that I already supported it? Before execution. How long before? Enough. A day? I don't know. An hour? Walter, Peter said, we can agree. The communication failed without speculating. Communication did not create a separate company. No. Communication did not list my employees and equipment as resources. No. Communication did not describe me as declining. Eric pushed his chair back. We covered that. Not in writing. What do you want in writing? A correction sent to every person who received that description. Nobody received a medical description. Then correcting it should be simple. Peter looked at Eric. We can draft a clarification. No lawyer language, I said. One sentence. Walter Keene has no known cognitive impairment, and prior references concerned a disagreement about management and technology. Eric's face reddened. That makes me look dishonest. You were dishonest. I never said you had an impairment. Then say so. He looked at Peter. Peter gave a small nod. A narrow clarification would reduce future ambiguity. Eric stood and walked to the coffee machine. He poured a cup he did not drink. Fine. Today, I said, fine. We returned to the money. Keene Diesel had paid all Redline formation costs. Redline itself had no employees, revenue, or meaningful assets. Eric had contributed $500. Grant's firm had contributed planning work valued at an amount they had not finalized. The 70-30 split was real, but Grant's ownership would vest only if Red Plains signed, and he remained general manager. So if Red Plains does not sign, Grant owns nothing? I asked. His membership interest can be repurchased for a nominal amount, Peter said. By whom? Eric. Not Keene Diesel. Correct. And if Red Plains signs, Grant owns 30% of the company receiving the contract. Correct. While Keene Diesel supplies the people and equipment. Under an agreement requiring your approval, which Eric expected me to approve after he announced I was stepping away. Peter did not answer. Eric returned to the table. I expected you to understand that this was the only way to bring in leadership without diluting your 40%. You protected my 40% of the old company while moving the growth elsewhere. I protected the company from you blocking a new partner. You protected your 70% of the new one. Because I built the deal, with $76,000 from Keene Diesel, which will be reimbursed. Where is that written? It will be. That means nowhere. Grant spoke for the first time in several minutes. Redline should reimburse every formation and planning expense attributable to it before any distribution. Eric looked at him. That was always understood. It was not documented, Grant said. You knew the cash position, Eric said. I knew it was tight. I did not know the tax reserve was used. Stop separating yourself now. I am separating facts. You were happy to own 30% yesterday. Based on information you gave me, you wrote the structure. You approved it. Enough, Peter said. It was the first time he raised his voice. The room became still. The current question is what may happen next without creating further exposure. He turned to me. Walter, are you willing to continue technical work while ownership issues are negotiated? Helen's warning returned. A week becomes whatever he needs. I should have said no. Instead, I looked through the glass at Tasha working beneath a truck, Cody carrying parts, and Marisol's empty counter because she was sitting beside me. I thought about payroll, the tax reserve, and the customers already scheduled. For existing Keene Diesel commitments, I said. Until Friday. Eric's shoulders lowered. We need more than 3 days. Friday. Red Plains may return next week. They are not an existing commitment. Without them, we cannot replace the reserve quickly. That does not make them mine, Peter asked. Will you permit your equipment to be used for existing work? Yes, with a list, and no removal from the property. Will you supervise? I will work as I normally worked through Friday. Will you train Grant? No. Eric slapped one palm against the table. Then what is the point? The point is, customers and employees do not suffer while we untangle what you did. Grant needs technical context to manage. He can observe. I will not train my replacement while he owns part of the company taking our work. Grant accepted that with a nod. Eric did not. And after Friday? Peter asked. We decide after full records and a real proposal. Can Redline continue pursuing Red Plains? Not using my name, license, photograph, building, equipment, employees, or Keen Diesel customer history. Then no, Eric said. You are killing it. Redline can pursue them with what Redline owns. It owns nothing yet. That is the point. The meeting ended with a temporary written agreement. No transfers. No new Redline activity using Keen Diesel resources. My permanent access code restored. My salary draw reinstated through Friday, though I nearly refused it out of anger, until Marisol reminded me I would be working. Eric signed the health clarification and sent it to Grant, Marisol, Peter, and the two Red Plains representatives, because they had heard enough of the hallway argument to form their own impressions. He refused to send it to the full staff, saying none of them had received the original claim. I let that go temporarily. That was my mistake. I told myself I was choosing the important battles. In truth, I still wanted to leave him one piece of dignity. The next 3 days were almost normal if I ignored the missing sign, the folding table in my office, and Grant's constant presence. I arrived through the side door with a working code. I supervised repairs, approved technical decisions, and answered customer questions. Grant followed technicians, documented workflow, and asked useful questions. He learned quickly. He also began noticing places where Eric's growth plan rested on hours and labor nobody had calculated honestly. The proposed Red Plains response time required 2 additional mobile technicians, not 1. The second shift needed a certified lead. The reporting package assumed Marisol could absorb several hours of daily data entry without changing her other duties. This was modeled on projected staffing, Grant said when I pointed it out. Projected staff do not answer phones, I said. He wrote that down. Eric stayed mostly in the office, making calls and revising cash forecasts. He spoke to me only about immediate work. On Thursday afternoon, Dana Cole called the main line and asked for me. We are willing to revisit next Tuesday, she said, only if the ownership and technical commitments are clear. They are not yet. Will they be? I cannot promise. Eric says you are negotiating an advisory contract. Eric says many things before asking me. She was silent for a moment. I do not want to get between family members. Then do not. I do need to know whether the equipment and certifications in the proposal are available. Not to Redline today. What about Keen Diesel? For existing work, yes. Could Keen Diesel hold the contract instead? That was the first question that made me sit upright. Why? Because that is the company with the staff, history, facility, and qualifications. Eric proposed Redline. We contract with providers, not branding plans. Would you consider Keen Diesel directly? If ownership agrees, and the operational plan is credible. I looked through the glass. Eric was standing beside Grant's desk, arguing over a spreadsheet. Send the requirements to both owners, I said. Not only Eric. I can do that. Do not schedule a meeting yet. Understood. When I ended the call, I did not tell Eric immediately. I told myself I wanted time to review the requirements. I also knew he would view a Keen Diesel contract as proof that I was trying to pull Red Plains away from Redline. That evening, I brought the requirements home. Helen read them at the kitchen table. Could the current company perform this? She asked. With hiring, yes. Could you and Eric own it together? We already do. That was not my question. I rubbed my thumb over a grease mark on the page. I don't know. Do you want to? I looked at the crooked plaque beside the sugar jar. I want him to stop acting like my presence makes his adulthood smaller. That is not a business answer. It is the only honest one I have. On Friday morning, the new sign arrived early. A flatbed truck backed into the lot carrying red letters and a black metal panel. Redline Fleet Solutions. Beneath it, in smaller white letters, a Keen Company. The installer said Eric had confirmed the job the previous afternoon. I stood outside, looking at the panel while he checked his work order. "Do not unload it," I said. "Sir, I have a signed authorization." "From whom?" "Eric Keen. The building belongs to me. I did not authorize mounting." Eric came through the front door before the driver could answer. "It was ordered weeks ago." "Cancel it. The deposit is non-refundable. Then store it somewhere else. This is the company location. Redline is not the tenant. Redline is our brand. It is a separate company owned by you and Grant." The installer looked from one of us to the other. "I can wait in the truck." "Do that," I said. Eric came closer. "You agreed to keep operations stable through today. Installing another company's sign is not existing work. We need the site ready for Tuesday. Dana has not scheduled Tuesday." His eyes narrowed. "You spoke to her. She called me. What did she say?" "She may consider Keen Diesel directly." The expression on his face was not surprise. It was fear, pure and immediate. "You cannot do that," he said. "Why?" "Because Redline has the exclusive development agreement." "With whom?" Red Plains discussions were introduced through Grant. Grant had come outside behind him. "There is no exclusivity with Red Plains," he said. Eric turned. "Our agreement gives Redline ownership of opportunities developed through your consulting work, between Redline and my firm," Grant said. "It does not bind Red Plains. You cannot take the account to Keen Diesel after building it for Redline." "Keen Diesel paid the consulting invoices," I said, "which is one of the issues we are correcting. By handing the opportunity back to the company that paid, you are stealing my deal. You used my company to create it." "Your company?" "Ours. When it suits you." The installer climbed into his cab and closed the door. Tasha and Cody watched from the bay entrance. Marisol stood behind the counter with the phone pressed to her ear but was no longer speaking. Eric lowered his voice. "Come inside. Tell the driver to leave. After we talk." Before. He pulled out his phone and called the sign company. He told them there was a site access issue and asked them to return the panel to storage. The flatbed left 10 minutes later. Eric watched it turn onto the road. "You always need the last word," he said. "That truck needed an answer. You know what I mean." "No, I know what you planned." "You still do not understand." "Then explain." He looked at the employees near the bays and shook his head. "Not here." We went into the office. Grant followed and closed the door. Eric opened the bottom drawer of the temporary desk and removed a blue folder I had not seen before. He placed it on the table but kept one hand over it. "Red Plains is not optional," he said. "Why?" "Because I signed a bridge note." "For how much?" "180,000. My mouth went dry. "Secured by what?" "My shares in Keen Diesel and my interest in Redline." "Who is the lender?" "Northline Growth Partners." I looked at Grant. "Your company?" He shook his head. "No. A private lender I introduced." "The same address as Bell Operations?" "Shared office suite. Different ownership." "Who owns it?" Eric answered. "A fund managed by Grant's former partner." "When did you sign?" "July." "Where did the money go?" "Software, legal fees, recruiting, the Red Plains build-out, working capital." "How much remains?" 42,000. "When is it due?" "December 1st unless Red Plains signs. Then it converts into a longer facility." "What happens if it is not paid?" "The lender can take my Keen Diesel shares." "And Redline?" "Yes." "Can they take the building?" "No." "My equipment?" "No." "The company's accounts?" "No." Peter had not mentioned the note during our owner meeting. Why was this not in the records yesterday? "It is my personal loan. Used to fund company activity. Used to fund Redline and reimburse Keen Diesel." "Did it reimburse Keen Diesel?" "Partly." "How much?" 60,000. "Where is it?" "Spent on operations." I stared at him. The cash problem was not merely caused by consulting fees. Eric had borrowed against his ownership, poured the money into a company I did not own, used part of it to refill holes created by that spending, and tied repayment to a contract that depended on my resources. Does the operating agreement allow a pledge of shares? I asked. Yes, with notice. Did you give me notice? Peter sent it. When? July. Where? Certified mail. To what address? He looked at the folder. The shop. Who signed? No answer. I took the folder from beneath his hand and opened it. A delivery receipt showed the notice had been accepted by E. Keene. You signed for your own notice to me. You were in Florida with Helen. You knew where I lived. The company address was valid. Did you put it in my mail? I intended to. Where is it? I don't know. You hid the notice. I did not hide it. You accepted it as me and never delivered it. The signature says E. Keene. Exactly. Grant sat down slowly. You told me Walter knew about the bridge financing. Eric turned on him. He knew we were investing in growth, not the same. Stop acting shocked. You introduced the lender. I introduced a financing option based on an agreed transition. You received your fees. For work, and now you want to stand beside him because Red Plains may contract with Keene Diesel instead. Grant's face became still. I want accurate facts. You want to protect your reputation. At this moment, yes. I closed the folder. What happens to the shop if the lender takes your shares? They become the majority owner. Northline owns 60% of Keene Diesel. Temporarily, unless you buy them. For 180,000 plus interest, the value of the shares is higher. Not if you move the best accounts to Redline. He looked away. The room seemed smaller than it had the day before. I had believed Eric was trying to push me out so he could finally control the business. The bridge note changed that. He had already placed his control at risk. If Red Plains failed and he could not repay the loan, a private lender could become my partner in Keene Diesel. If Red Plains succeeded through Redline, the valuable new contract would sit outside Keene Diesel while my company supplied the work. Either path weakened the place I thought I was protecting. My objective had been to force my son to restore my role and speak honestly. Standing beside the temporary desk, I understood that getting my office back would solve almost nothing. How many people know? I asked. Peter. Grant. The lender. Marisol? No. Helen? No. Employees? No. Does the lender have any right to interfere before default? Financial reporting and approval over additional debt. Access to company records? Limited. Did they approve the Redline structure? Yes. Of course they did. They want the contract to succeed. They want assets they can take if it does not. That is how lending works. You used to ask me before borrowing $20,000 for a service truck, and you would take 3 months to decide. So you risked the company to avoid hearing no. I risked my shares. Your shares control everyone's jobs. I was trying to save those jobs. From what? He looked at the floor. From a company that cannot stay small forever and still survive. We were not failing. We were aging. Customers were aging. You were aging. Every year, more revenue depended on relationships with men who call only because they trust you. When you leave, half of them leave too. Then you build trust. I tried. They still ask for Walter. His voice broke on my name, and he hated that it did. I needed one account that belonged to what I built. I looked at him for a long time. There it was, mixed with the lies, the side company, the borrowed money, and the badge. Not only greed, not only ambition, but a son who believed nothing in the building would ever be recognized as his, while my name remained above the bays. I could understand the wound. I could not let him use it to hollow out the company. You should have told me, I said. You would have stopped me, maybe. Exactly. And now I have to stop more than a sign. His eyes lifted. What does that mean? I put the bridge note folder under my arm with the other papers. It means I am done trying to negotiate my way back into the role you removed. I need to protect Keene Diesel from Redline, from the lender, and from any agreement that uses resources you do not own. You cannot interfere with my shares. I do not need to. What are you going to do? I looked through the glass at the red tool chest, the technicians in the bays, and the empty pale rectangles where my name had been. First, I am going to find out exactly what remains under my control. At that moment, Marisol opened the office door without knocking. "Walter," she said, holding the phone against her shoulder. "Northline Growth Partners is on line 2. They say they need to confirm the equipment access certificate before 5 o'clock. Marisol kept the receiver against her shoulder while she waited for me to answer. Eric moved toward the phone first, but I held up one hand. "Put it on speaker," I said. She pressed the button and set the receiver in its cradle. A woman introduced herself as Celia Ward, Portfolio Manager for Northline Growth Partners. Her voice was calm and slightly impatient, the voice of someone who had already sent the same request twice. "We need the equipment access certificate returned before 5, she said. Mr. Keene confirmed this morning that the delay was administrative. Eric leaned over the counter. "It is. I'll send it." "Which Mr. Keene?" I asked. There was a pause. "Eric Keene," Celia said. "And you are?" "Walter Keene. I own the building, several items on the equipment schedule, and 40% of Keene Diesel service." Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Walter Keene, your signature is required as landlord and equipment owner." "Then the certificate is not administrative." Eric closed his eyes briefly. Celia said, "Are you refusing to sign?" "I have not seen it." "We sent it to company counsel and Mr. Eric Keene."